that picture was made with great difficulties because nobody knew what the next day's shooting was going to be like. They didn't know the story. It was really written by ear as we went along. I was supposed to be married to Paul Hendry, and Humphrey Bogart was my great love. And they said, don't be so serious now. Play it just a little bit cool. And I said, what do you mean? Because we haven't decided on the end yet.
There was a lot of chaos in the second half of the picture because we were shooting, and there was a stop date on Bergman, and nobody knew what the ending was going to be. So there was a great deal of, in the front office, it can only be characterized as hysteria.
And that made Humphrey Bogart also very upset. So everybody was on edge and not very happy about it.
During the hysteria of the ending, my brother Phil and I, who collaborated for many years, we looked at each other and said, round up the usual suspects. And we knew we had an ending.
Are you ready, Ilsa?
Yes, I'm ready. Bye, Rick. God bless you.
Gotta hurry, you'll miss that plane. Hello, put that phone down. Get me the radio tower. Put it down.
Strutter has been shot. Round up the usual suspects. It might be a good idea for you to disappear from Casablanca for a while. There's a Free French garrison over at Brazzaville. I could be induced to arrange a passage.
My letter of transit? I could use a trip. But it doesn't make any difference about our bet. You still owe me 10,000 francs.
And that 10,000 francs should pay our expenses.
Our expenses?
Mm-hmm.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
There are many ways to serve your country, Medrick. What if you didn't reach Marseille?
I've got to reach Marseille. I don't care about my country. The France you and I loved is dead, Captain. She's been dying for a long time. I saw her die in the Rhineland into Munich. Now that her death is complete, I can stop lying and tell the truth. I'm trying to get back to a woman I never intended to fight.
Following the success of Casablanca, Bogey was reunited with director Michael Curtiz and several other members of the cast, including Claude Rains, in Passage to Marseille.
Why should we help you escape?
I'll leave that to your conscience.
Your wife is waiting for the man who went away.
But the chemistry wasn't there, and the story seemed more than a bit contrived.
Would you betray such a woman? I leave that to your conscience.
The movie wasn't a blockbuster, but it was an important time for Bogey and me. It was 1944. I was 19, brand new in Hollywood, and under personal contract to director Howard Hawks. Now, Howard had told me he wanted me to be in a movie with either Cary Grant or Humphrey Bogart. I thought, wow, Cary Grant. Bogart? Good actor, but that was all. Well, one day, Howard told me he'd like to introduce me to Humphrey Bogart. Took me onto the set of Passage to Marseille and introduced me to Humphrey Bogart. I'm sorry to say there were no fireworks. He said, "How do you do?" I said, "How do you do?" And that was it. I'd already tested for the have and have not and was going to be in it with, of course, Bogey's approval. And one day I was going into Hawks's office and Bogey was on his way out. As we passed, he said, "Oh, by the way, I saw your test. We'll have a lot of fun together." Oh, he was right about that.
Sometimes I know exactly what you're going to say. Most of the time. The other times... The other times, you're just a stinker.
What'd you do that for?
Been wondering whether I'd like it.
What's the decision?
I don't know yet.
Y tus trailers, visita mi canal.
It's even better when you help. Sure you won't change your mind about this?
Uh-huh.
This belongs to me and so do my lips. I don't see any difference.
Oh, I do.
Okay. You know you don't have to act with me, Steve. You don't have to say anything and you don't have to do anything. Not a thing. Oh, maybe just whistle. You know how to whistle, don't you, Steve? You just put your lips together and blow.
I never stopped shaking. I was very nervous. He was very patient. He did everything to make me comfortable. I was very lucky to start my career with him. You see, Bogey was, above all else, a professional. He'd had years on the stage and over 50 films. He believed in actors, and he believed in actors working together. He believed in truth, and he missed nothing. We had a scene in To Have and Have Not. Takes place in his room. Kind of amusing and sexy dialogue filled with double entendres, and the scene ended in a clinch. Bogey had remembered seeing London Fontanne in a play, where after their clinch, she ran her hand up the side of his face and gave him a playful slap. Well, Howard Hawks loved it. You see what you think.
Walk around me. Now, go ahead, walk around me. Clear around. You find anything?
No. No, Steve. There are no strings tied to you. Not yet. Oh, I like that. Except for the beard. Why don't you shave and we'll try it again.
The Big Sleep was next, and the more I watched Bogey, the more impressed I was with his inventiveness as an actor, and his wit. In the bookstore scene with Sonia Dowan, for example, that business with the hat and glasses was his idea.
Can I be of any assistance?
Yes. Would you happen to have a Ben-Hur 1860?
A what?
I said, would you happen to have a Ben-Hur 1860?
Oh, a first edition.
No. The third. The one with the erratum on page 116.
I'm afraid not.
How about a Chevalier Audubon 1840 full set, of course?
Not at the moment.
You do sell books.
What do those look like? Grapefruit?
Well, from here they look like books. Maybe I better see Mr. Geiger.
He's not in just now.
Well, that's a pity because
I said Mr. Geiger is not in.
I heard you. You needn't yell at me. Well, I'm already late for my lecture on Argentine ceramics, so I guess I won't wait.
The word is ceramics. And they ain't Argentine, they're Egyptian.
You did sell a book once, didn't you? Well, I guess I'll run along to the public library, or I could go to that bookstore across the street, couldn't I?
Do so.
Thank you.
One day, a very telling thing happened. We were shooting a rather simple scene.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, Norris. I'd like to see General Sternwood. He's asleep, sir.
I had to come from my bedroom and walk to the door. Easy. Well, something went wrong with the first take. Before take two, Bogey came over to me and said, weren't you doing something before? Like combing your hair, filing your nails? You can't just walk out of your room to the door like a model. You've got to have an attitude, point of view. I never forgot that. It was a great lesson. Yeah, we did it again and it worked, I think.
Well, what about Mrs. Rutledge? Is she... Yes. Oh, good evening, Mrs. Rutledge.
Hello.
I've got your sister outside. She's all right, but she's not walking very well. I'll need some help.
In The Big Sleep, Bogey played
Anything
Detective
special
Philip
you wanted to see me
Marlowe,
about?
trying to solve a
Yeah.
very complicated
Dad
case.
asked me to give you a check.
Watch this scene carefully.
the case
It hasn't
called.
been seen since
Oh?
the movie was first
It is,
released,
isn't it?
thank God.
Well, as regards Geiger, yes.
And it's completely closed. I hope this is satisfactory.
500. Well, it's a lot more than I expected, but welcome just the same. Here you are. Here's the 3 promissory notes and Geiger's card. They're in there. As for the rest of the photographs, I'll destroy them myself if you don't mind.
We appreciate what you've done, Mr. Marlowe. Someday my father would like to thank you himself.
Fine, I'll come up and drink some more of his brandy. Maybe talk some more about Sean Regan.
My brandy's just as good. Maybe sometime, if you can stop being a detective long enough, you might have a drink with me.
After we
I'd like
shot
to.
that scene
I
and
like
the film
brandy.
was put together,
Have lots of it.
Bogey and I were married. Because there wasn't enough male-female byplay in the first version, the scene was rewritten and
As
reshot.
far as Geiger's concerned, yes.
Then it's completely closed. I hope this is satisfactory.
500. Well, that's a lot more than I expected, but welcome just the same.
We're very grateful to you, Mr. Marlowe, and I'm very glad it's all over. Tell me, what do you usually do when you're not working?
Play the horses, fool around.
No women?
Well, I'm generally working on something most of the time.
Could that be stretched to include me?
Well, I like you. I told you that before.
I liked hearing you say it. But you didn't do much about it.
Well, neither did you.
Well, speaking of horses, I like to play them myself. But I like to see them work out a little first. See if they're front runners or come from behind. Find out what their whole card is. What makes them run.
Find out mine?
I think so.
Hizo trailers.
Go ahead.
Visita mi canal.
I'd say you don't like to be rated. You like to get out in front. Open up a lead. Take a little breather in the back stretch and then come home free.
You don't like to be rated yourself.
I haven't met anyone yet that could do it. Any suggestions?
Well, I can't tell till I've seen you over a distance of ground. Got a touch of class, but I don't know how far you can go.
A lot depends on who's in the saddle. Go ahead, Marlowe. I like the way you work.
Bogey and I were married on May 21st, 1945, at the Ohio farm of his great friend, writer Louis Bromfield. During the ceremony, I glanced at Bogey and saw he had tears in his eyes. He said it was hearing the traditional words and realizing their meaning that did it. 3.5 years later, we became parents, the first time for each of us. Stephen Humphrey, the Steve after Bogey's character in To Have and Have Not, was born on January 6, 1949. So Bogey became a father at the age of 49, and more than a bit awed by it. Our daughter Leslie, named after her father's mentor, Leslie Howard, arrived less than 4 years later. There he was, the man who never thought he'd have a family with a family. A wife he loved who loved him, and a beautiful son and daughter. You know, before I ever met him, I thought Bogey really talked like he did in all those gangster films. I was shocked to discover that he didn't. Off-screen, he bore little resemblance to the parts he played. He was a gent. In his words, a last century boy. His own man, standards high, true character and integrity. He would not tolerate a lie. So what people call toughness was not toughness. It was conviction. Let the chips fall where they may, he would not compromise. In 1947, we were among a group from Hollywood that flew to Washington to protest the House Un-American Activities Committee's investigation of alleged communists in the film industry.
This is Humphrey Bogart. We sat in the committee room and heard it happen. We saw the gavel of a committee chairman cutting off the words of free Americans. The sound of that gavel, Mr. Thomas, rings across America. Because every time your gavel struck, it hit the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States.
We also got involved in presidential campaigns, supporting Harry Truman when he ran for a full term in 1948, and worked fervently for Adlai Stevenson in '52.
They were a very gutsy couple, the Bogarts. And during that campaign, the studios, while pretending to official neutrality, certainly hinted to a lot of their stars that an embrace of Stevenson might shorten the long-term contract. And so there was an absolute stampede of stars who liked Ike. I think it's just typical of Bogart that he would say, "To hell with them. We're going off with Stevenson."
The reason that Bogart and Bacall become a symbol is they had not only the ability in their private life to love each other and to love their children, but to be able to put it on the screen so it didn't make you squirm in the seat.
Our third film together was Dark Passage, shot partly on location in San Francisco. It was a romantic mystery with Bogey playing an innocent man on the run from the law.
This is Alan.
Do I hear music?
Yes, I picked it out on the jukebox. And I'm just beginning to realize it's better to have something to look forward to. Can you get a map of South America?
I'll find one.
Look up Peru. There's a little town on the coast called Parte. Say it. Tell me where it is.
Parte, in Peru.
Good. Now listen. I won't write. We've got to wait. We've got to give it plenty of time. Maybe they'll get a lead on you. Maybe they'll keep an eye on you for a while.
I'll be careful. Go on.
Meanwhile, God's good to me and I managed to make it down there. I'll be waiting for you. There's a little cafe right on the bay. If you could see your way clear, listen to all those ifs.
We'll skip all the ifs. I get the idea, and that's all I need. Now hang up on me. Just like that. Hang up, darling.
And then John Huston lured Bogey to a rugged and windy location in Mexico. The film was Treasure of the Sierra Madre. In these recently discovered outtakes, you'll notice Bogey also had to contend with some undisciplined four-legged extras. Treasure was an important film in both Bogey's and John Huston's careers. In addition to writing the screenplay and directing, Huston played a small cameo role in the beginning of the film.
Early this afternoon, I gave you money. While I was having my shoes polished, I gave you more money. Now you put the bite on me again. Do me a favor, will you? Go occasionally to somebody else. It's beginning to get tiresome.
Oh, excuse me, mister. I never knowed it was you. I never looked at your face. I just looked at your hands and the money you gave me. Beg pardon, mister. I promise I'll never put the bite on you again.
This is the very last you get from me. Just to make sure you don't forget your promise. Here's another peso.
Thanks, mister. Thanks.
But from now on, you have to make your way through life without my assistance.
I wrote the script.
They're running short of provisions, doubtlessly.
And I had two people in mind. One was my father, and the other was Bogart.
What's that, Doc?
Well, they were the two closest actors to me.
Look out, it's a bad sign when the guy starts talking to himself.
Yeah, well, who else am I going to talk to? Certainly not you or Curtin. Fine partners you two are.
Got something up your nose? Blow it out. It'll do you good.
I don't get the idea you two are putting anything over on me.
Take it easy, Doc.
I know what your game is.
Well, you know more than I do.
Why am I elected to go to the village? Why me instead of you and Curtin? Oh, don't think I don't see through that. You two thrown together against me. The 2 days I'd be gone would give you plenty of time to discover where my goods are, wouldn't it?
Got any fear along those lines? Why don't you take your goods along with you?
And run the risk of having them taken from me by bandits?
If you was to run into bandits, you'd be out of luck anyway. They'd kill you for the shoes on your feet.
Oh, so that's it. Everything's clear now. You're hoping bandits will get me. That would save you a lot of trouble, wouldn't it?
And your consciences wouldn't bother you none, neither. All right, Dobbs. Forget about it.
John Huston and Bogey loved working together. And with John's direction, Bogey gave some of the best performances of his career, such as the developing paranoia in the Dobbs character.
Get your hands up. Come on, get them up! Was I right, or was I? You and your Sunday school talk about protecting people's goods. You. Come on, stand up and take it like a man. Come on, get up! Let go of it. Cards are dealt the other way now, Dobbs.
Yeah.
Now listen to me.
I'll listen to you.
Look, you're all wrong. Not for a moment did I ever intend to rob you or do you any harm. Just like I said, I'd fight for you and yours just the same as I'd fight for the old man's.
If you really mean that, give me back my gun. My pal.
Wouldn't it be better the way things are to separate tomorrow? Or even tonight?
That would suit you fine, wouldn't it?
Why me more than you?
So you could fall on me from behind, sneak up and shoot me in the back.
All right, I'll go first.
And wait for me on the trail, ambush me?
Why wouldn't I do it right here and now if I meant to kill you?
I'll tell you why. Because you're yellow. You haven't got nerve enough to pull the trigger while I'm looking you straight in the eye.
If you think like that, there's nothing to do but to tie you up every night.
I'll tell you what. I'll make you a little bet. 3 times 35 is 105. I'll bet you $105,000 you go to sleep before I do.
John Huston also directed the 4th and final film Bogey and I made together, Key Largo. It was a fantastic experience working with John and that terrific ensemble. Lionel Barrymore, Claire Trevor, Edward G. Robinson. The screenplay for Key Largo was written by John Huston and Richard Brooks.
Bogey, in that part, was everything that he should have been. It's a passive role. But he made a passive role an active character. And if you ever see that movie again, watch what he does with it. Watch him play a decent moment that we all would like to be able to do, even though someone's holding a pistol on us or throwing a gun down on us. Watch him play it.
Smacker. Get it out of your system.
Look at him, the great Johnny Rocco, with Nora's spittle hanging from his face.
Now, shut up, old man.
Come over here. I'd like to spit on you.
Gimme. Gimme. Nothing to stop me from wiping you all out.
What good'll that do, boss? Forget it. Her kind's a dime a dozen.
I say smack her and let it go at that.
Oh, that'll be right for you, Toots, not for him.
I need your advice. I ask for it.
The Roccos don't, or they wouldn't be Roccos. No, Toots, smacking her isn't enough for such an insult. He'd have to kill her. And he'd have to kill the rest of us because we witnessed it. Not just Mr. Temple and me, but all the witnesses. It's kill us all or nothing. He needs you and Curly and Angel, so it'll be nothing.
Nice guy.
And at the end, after all those early movies when Bogey was done in by Edward G. Robinson, film after film, finally, it was his turn.
Okay, soldier? I'm coming out. Okay, soldier? I got no gun and I'm coming out. Soldier!
All of Bogey's seeming knowledge about boats in that movie were not manufactured. He was a terrific seaman, and he loved the sea. And so when it came time to put a name on this little boat, Key Largo, he suggested, well, why don't we call it the Santana? That's the name of Bogey's boat. Almost every weekend that was possible to get away, that's where he'd be, on that boat. And I think I made some movies of some of those weekends, and I could begin to understand his passion that he had for sailing. He was in command for a short time of his own destiny.
Bogey loved teaching me his love of the sea. It was one of his greatest joys when Steve was old enough to come on board. Bogey was fulfilled, completely satisfied when he was on the Santana. One look at his face and you could see the purity and the simplicity of the man I knew.
Unless you really understand the water and understand the reason for being on it and understand the love of sailing and the feeling of quietness and solitude, you don't really belong on a boat anyway. I think Hemingway said one time, the sea was the last free place on earth.
Bogey had now decided it was time to realize his dream of professional independence. He wanted to make his own choices. So after 12 years of being a contract player at Warner Brothers, he formed his own company, Santana Productions. The first film from Santana was Knock on Any Door.
Knock on any door, and you may find Nick Romano.
Bogey played an attorney who defended a young kid on trial for killing a cop.
The newspapers have been clamoring for pictures and stories about this trial. Well, why don't you print this? They and you and I, we good people, we the solid citizens of this community, we photographed and labeled this boy years ago. We made this rendezvous with him years ago. We brutalized and ordered him here years ago. If he dies in the electric chair, we killed him. Print that! Where do we take him now? Do we kill him? The current coursing through the blood, the nerves, the heart, the brain. I ask mercy from this court. I ask this so that for us who walk free, or all of us, there may be some mercy.
Bogey's biggest problem as an independent was finding good material. But sometimes the effort paid off.
One of the most interesting, I think, Humphrey Bogart performances where there's a kind of a merging of the mythological Bogart and the actor Bogart is in Nicholas Ray's In a Lonely Place, in which he plays a very neurotic writer. That is an interesting combination of the two sides of Bogart.
Well, that's all right, Fran. I've already told Laurel how you used to pursue me.
Dick, Brody wants me for the part of Althea. I'm going to read the script tonight.
Whose script?
Yours, genius. He's going to send it to my house. That is, if he likes it.
Did he tell you where he got my script?
I took it to him, thanks, this morning. I stole it out of Laurel's desk.
No, he didn't. I gave it to him.
Brody's been so impatient.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mel. I always put my foot into it.
Don't be angry, Dix. I know Brody will love it.
Oh, I don't blame you, but Mel should have known better.
Why don't I keep my big mouth shut?
Is there a juicy part in it for me? Did you read it?
No.
You're lying. You read it and you didn't like it.
What does it matter what I think? I'm the guy that tried to talk Selznick out of doing Gone with the Wind.
What's wrong with my script?
Nothing, but it's not the book. And that's what Brody asked for, a faithful adaptation.
The book was trash and you're a thief.
Dix, please.
Santana was in business for 6 years and produced 5 movies. The last of them was shot on location in Ravello, Italy. Called Beat the Devil, it had everything going for it. A script by Truman Capote and John Huston, with Huston directing. A couple of John's friends shot this footage of an early scene in the film. The cast included Peter Lorre, Gina Lola Brigida, Jennifer Jones, and Robert Morley.
Not quite now, Convict Billy. Hard liquor before noon.
I'm celebrating.
Celebrating what?
The safe arrival of the Major. He came galloping in a minute ago looking tired but satisfied. I take it his mission was accomplished?
Yes, but he's getting on for lunch.
Beat the Devil was a disappointment on all counts when it first came out. But in more recent times, it's gained a cult following.
If I loved you 1,000 times more than you say you love me, it still wouldn't make any difference. I've got to have money. Doctor's orders are that I must have a lot of money. Otherwise, I become dull, listless, and have trouble with my complexion.
But you're not like that now, and you haven't any money.
It's my expectations that hold me together.
3 years earlier, in 1951, John Huston lured Bogey and Katharine Hepburn to a far more exotic location, the Belgian Congo, to make the African Queen. I went with them and tried to capture some of our adventures in these home movies.
Everything was divine with Katie. She loved every minute of it. She would like to stay there for the next 6 years. My wife was on Katie's side, and they were both on John Huston's side. I guess I was the only one who thought it was too hot and too damp, and why were we there? So I just drank my scotch and griped.
Bogey seemed nice, and he was very direct. I don't think he was curious about Africa. I don't think he wanted to hunt elephants. He certainly wasn't like John. I know Bogey admired John, and understandably, because John, while he was difficult, was no fool. And John was obviously always anxious to have him. And I thought Bogey had the absolutely perfect personality for that part.
At first, he said, I don't know how to go about it. And but there was that quality in Bogey that I knew would furnish Mr. Allnutt's character.
For his performance as Charlie Allnutt, Bogey got his second Oscar nomination for Best Actor.
The winner is Humphrey Bogart.
The response to his winning amazed Bogey. He'd never thought of himself as a popular choice, as well as a deserving one. To him, acting was collaborative, never competitive. He took great pride in his profession. He liked being an actor. As a man who always enjoyed the company of newspaper men and counted many among his friends, his next role seemed a natural. The film was Deadline USA, written and directed by Richard Brooks.
We were shooting in New York, and the Daily News had very kindly agreed to let us use the newspaper in the city room as well as the press room. Bogey came in early, and he would spend a good deal of time up there in the city room, watching it work, and seeing what his job was really about, and how the newspaper itself functioned. Bogart is the managing editor of a great newspaper. The publisher of the paper has died, and a sporting newspaper is trying to buy it.
As far as we're concerned, his offer is a generous one.
He's only buying our circulation features and goodwill. He's eliminating his competition, that's all. Mrs. Garrison, you've got to stop them. Your husband created a new kind of journalism, and you helped him. Take a look at the first paper you ever printed. Here, page 1, quote. This paper will fight for progress and reform. We'll never be satisfied merely with printing the news. We'll never be afraid to attack wrong, whether by predatory wealth or predatory poverty. You're not selling the day, you're killing it.
The hearing to approve the sale will take place in Surrogate's Court day after tomorrow. You'll be there, of course.
I never go to funerals.
Bogey teamed with writer director Richard Brooks again for Battle Circus with June Allison. He played a surgeon, shades of his own father, in a mobile army hospital in Korea. It was MASH, 17 years before the movie called MASH was made.
Originally ours was called MASH, but studio didn't like the title because they thought that people might think it had something to do with a potato. Yeah. In any event, I gave him the script to read, and he said, yeah, he'd like to do it because he thought that the combination of humor against the tragedy of war was so outrageous. That, in contrast, would become real.
You got a problem?
Can't open my eyes. Do I look all right in the morning?
You look fine in the morning.
Do you believe in dreams?
Only about lush women and black silk stockings.
I had a dream about us.
Why dream, baby?
We were in our house, and you were very, very sick, and I made you well.
And I know how.
I cooked and I baked for you.
That's what made me sick.
And then when you came home from the office...
No, I never come home. Work all day at the office.
Oh, well, then I'll come and see you. And I'll pretend I'm a patient. Then in your private office, we'll make love.
I lose more patience that way.
You're a funny guy. Can't you say you love me?
Well, I think it's better to do it than say it.
You don't, though, do you?
Why do we have to talk about it? Why do we always have to try to find words for it?
The truth is that
The truth should never be told by lovers. When it is, the affair is over.
He gets the girl in the end. And a few years later, he wins again as a conservative businessman competing with his younger brother for the affections of Audrey Hepburn. Bogey wasn't very happy with this film, but audiences loved it.
How do you say in French, my sister has a yellow pencil?
Ma sœur a un crayon jaune.
How do you say, my brother has a lovely girl?
Mon frère a une gentille petite amie.
And how do you say, I wish I were my brother?
As much as Bogey enjoyed the variety of roles he played, audiences still thought of him as the ultimate tough guy.
Hey, who are you, hey? I'm talking to you, Fatso. Where would Eddie Cantor be?
It amused him a lot, and over the years he often had fun with this image.
Listen, Jughead, don't you believe Eddie Cantor wants to talk to me? He's been sending me notes all day. Here, I'll show some of the notes to you.
Notes to me?
Yeah.
Notes to you, too? I'm a musician. I know more about notes than you do.
All right. Cool off.
And when I talk to you, keep a civil tongue in my hat.
Well, what did I do?
Did I send for you?
Why, no, but...
I start this conversation.
No, but...
Then you mind my business and I mind yours. Now get outstairs and never come back. You understand?
Well, sure, if that's the way you want it.
Chisler.
Let the old man bulldoze you, eh?
Yeah, that ain't like me. Gee, I hope none of my movie fans hear about this.
You never leave me alone because you've been hounding me just because I pulled a couple of lousy murders.
And here, too, with Jack Benny.
Well, what are you going to do?
I'm going to put a red eye between them two blue ones.
Where'd you get the gun?
You didn't frisk me so good when I came in, did you?
No, when I put my hand in your pocket, I found a dollar bill, and I got so excited I didn't look at it.
In 1954 came one of Bogey's most striking performances, The Caine Mutiny, from the book by Herman Wouk. Bogey based his portrayal of the mentally ill Captain Queeg on someone he knew who suffered from paranoia, and he received his third Oscar nomination. His co-star was Van Johnson.
I have just relieved the captain. He will continue to be treated with the utmost courtesy, but from now on, I will give all orders. I take full responsibility for this action.
Don't kid yourself. Mr. Keith backed you up. He'll pay the same as you will. You officers, if you know what's good for you, tell them to stop now while they can. You officers approve? Do you, Mr. Kiefer?
It isn't up to Mr. Kiefer to approve, Captain.
You'll all hang for conspiracy to mutiny.
Everybody back to their stations. Hold the course 000.
I saw this man go mad in front of me, particularly at the trial at the end, when he realized he gave himself away with the steel balls, and he did it so beautifully with those crazy eyes, and practically talked himself into showing that he was paranoid and was guilty of neglecting his ship.
I'm afraid the defense has no other recourse than to produce Ensign Harding.
Now, there's no need for that. I know exactly what he'll tell you. Lies. He was no different from any other officer in the wardroom. They were all disloyal. I tried to run the ship properly with the book, but they fought me at every turn. If the crew wanted to walk around with their shirt tails hanging out, that's all right. Let them. Take the tow line. Defective equipment, no more, no less. But they encouraged the crew to go around scoffing at me and spreading wild rumors about steaming in circles and then old Yellowstain. I was to blame for Lieutenant Merrick's incompetence and poor seamanship. Lieutenant Merrick was the perfect officer, but not Captain Queeg. But the strawberries, that's where I had them. They laughed at me and made jokes. But I proved beyond the shadow of a doubt and with geometric logic that a duplicate key to the wardrobe icebox did exist, and I'd have produced that key if they hadn't pulled the cane out of action. I know now they were only trying to protect some fellow officer, and... Naturally, I can only cover these things from memory. If I've left anything out, why, just ask me specific questions and I'll be glad to answer them one by one.
Whatever part Bogey played, he had to believe in the character and the situation.
Where's Toro?
He prepared for his part in The Harder They Fall by soaking up seedy gymnasium atmosphere and going to fights at Madison Square Garden.
Okay.
The Harder They Fall was to be his final film.
He can't hit, he's a stiff, muscle-bound. You're not even a
Bogey
tenth-rate
played a
fighter.
sports
You're
writer
what they
turned
call
corrupt
a
press
bum.
agent for a clumsy giant whose bouts were fixed by a crooked manager.
I do not know my own strength.
Believe all those lies I write about you. Nick Benko paid me to make up those fairy tales so people would think you couldn't be hurt.
No one can hurt Del Toro.
The script was based on a novel by Bud Schulter.
Go away, Eddie.
He was really
Go away.
someone who's in a tough and cynical world and yet is almost secretly not a part of that world, and who is driven by his conscience when he realizes what they've done to this poor dumb giant.
I go home now. Get my money.
Yeah, I'll get your money and you can go home. I don't talk anymore. Wait a second. What's going on here?
What's the matter with you? You're in.
Sure, I'm making you the same deal that Nick gave you.
You're gonna have to
Bogart
watch me.
feels for him and tries to get the money for him.
There's your share. $26,000. Want to count it?
What's Toro got coming?
It's the climactic moment of the movie, the scene that gave him a chance to play in that very, very controlled way that he had, while telling you that he felt much more than he was showing.
Tell me how much Toro's got coming.
Wait, I want you to hear all of it. There's the equipment, sparring partners, transportation, long-distance calls, telegrams, bills to the other
How
parties
much
who
does he
attack,
get?
federal state taxes, petty cash, and miscellaneous.
How much does he get?
Exactly $49.07.
Let me hold my money, Eddie.
All right, there it is.
How much?
$26,000.
In my country, that is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money in any country.
Around this time, 1956, Bogey and I were planning another movie together called Melville Goodwin, USA. But it was never to be. Bogey became seriously ill. We never got any further than this costume test.
When anyone is desperately ill, you get a feeling, oh dear, it's going to be soon, which struck me. So Spencer and I went to the house, we went in, and we talked for a while, and Bogey was entertaining, as always, and he was sitting in a chair in his bedroom, sitting in a wheelchair. And then we got up to go so as not to exhaust him, and I kissed him goodbye, walked over to the door, and Spencer walked over and patted his shoulder and said, we're on our way, and Bogey reached up with his hand, patted Spencer's hand, looked at him, and said, goodbye, Spence.
Bogey died the next morning. It's now 31 years later. Our children are grown. Steve is a network television news producer. Leslie is a registered nurse and teaches yoga. They wear the Bogart name proudly and are the kind of people Bogey wanted them to be. For myself, I can only say that he changed me. He was my teacher, my husband, my friend. In his life and his work, Bogey was integrity, truth, and courage. He taught me how to live, that it was okay to trust. He taught me to keep going, no matter what. He did. And he is.